In a world where political debates often devolve into noisy theatrics and grandstanding, can the truth still find its voice? One day, on national television, a freshman representative proved that truth, however quietly delivered, has the power to shake an entire system. This isn't just a story about winning an argument. It's a powerful reminder of the importance of preparation, composure, and the courage to stand up for what's right. J.D. Vance thought it was just another Sunday debate until Jasmine Crockett calmly exposed a surveillance scandal tied directly to his office. The lights were bright, but Jasmine Crockett barely noticed. She'd been on sets like this before. Morning panels, sharp suits, too much makeup under studio heat. They were in Dallas this time, at the Lone Star Forum, a Sunday roundtable known for spirited debates and occasional side-eyes. Nothing ever really exploded. It wasn't that kind of show. Across from her sat Senator J.D. Vance, slouched slightly, confident, comfortable, like a man who believed no one in the room could out-talk him. He had that smirk tight at the corners of his mouth, the kind that says, "This is going to be easy." The moderator, Gina Breener, shuffled a few papers, mic clipped, throat cleared. "Let's begin with budget allocation," she said, voice crisp. "Representative Crockett, you voiced concerns about cuts to public education in rural counties." Jasmine leaned forward, slow, deliberate. "Yes, Gina. What we're seeing, particularly in towns like Waco and Odessa, is a strategic dismantling. Less funding, fewer teachers, bigger classes. And the argument is always that the budget demands it. But who's really feeling the pinch? Not the ones writing the bills." Vance jumped in. "That's an oversimplification. Texas needs economic discipline. We're not here to babysit bad spending habits. We're here to protect the taxpayers." His words were sharp, but Jasmine didn't flinch. She tilted her head, just slightly. "Senator, are you saying investing in children is bad spending?" He waved his hand like brushing away a gnat. "I'm saying throwing money into broken systems without reform is foolish." There was a pause. Gina glanced between them, trying to guide the conversation back into safe territory. "Let's keep it civil, please. Viewers are interested in solutions." Jasmine smiled, but not the kind of smile you give when you're pleased. It was tight, barely there, the kind that means, "I'm letting you talk for now." The next few minutes were what anyone would expect from a Sunday talk show. Polished stats, rehearsed quotes, two politicians trying to outlogic each other in 30-second sound bites. But Jasmine wasn't here to play that game. Not this time, because something was brewing beneath her calm exterior. Weeks of preparation, quiet research, long nights digging through campaign filings, buried amendments, financial disclosures. She hadn't told her staff everything. Didn't want leaks. Only 3 people knew what she had in her folder: her chief of staff, her legal advisor, and her. But it wasn't time yet, so she let J.D. talk about waste, about personal responsibility, about freedom. He liked to use that word a lot, freedom, as if it covered every flaw in a policy like a magic coat of paint. She let the minutes pass, answering questions, watching his posture, timing his responses. She noted every smirk, every time he interrupted, every time Gina tried to reel him back. She waited. Because what was coming wasn't just a debate shift. It wasn't about scoring points. It was about something deeper, something that spoke to character, hypocrisy, and power hiding behind rhetoric. She glanced down once at her folder, neatly tabbed, organized, underlined. Inside were documents linking Vance's office to a private surveillance contractor based out of Salt Lake City. Nothing illegal, nothing that screamed scandal at first glance, but the details, the timing, the legislation Vance had quietly backed after a campaign donation from that firm. It painted a picture, and she was ready to show it, but not yet. She needed one more opening, one false step from him, one arrogant line, too many. And it was coming. She could feel it. But J.D. didn't know that. Not yet. He thought he was in control. He wasn't. He had no idea what was waiting on the other side of Jasmine's silence. But something was coming. And when it did, the room would shift. Not in volume, in gravity. Because Jasmine wasn't here to win an argument. She was here to pull back the curtain, and people would be watching. But this panel was just warming up. What came next would change everything. J.D. Vance was riding high, the kind of rhythm politicians crave. He had just tossed out a line about Washington elitists playing hero in towns they've never visited, and it landed like a solid punch. The panel chuckled. Gina tried to move on, but Jasmine didn't laugh. She leaned back in her chair, gave it 2 seconds, maybe 3. Then, in the clearest tone she'd used all morning, she said, "You've never actually been a Crockett, Texas, have you, Senator?" That caught him off guard. "I don't see how that's relevant." "It's relevant," she interrupted calmly, "because you're talking about those communities as if they're your political chessboard. You haven't been there. I have. You voted to slash funding to broadband infrastructure in rural towns. Meanwhile, you're giving interviews about fighting for the forgotten. Which is it?" The air stiffened. "J'ai de blanc. I've supported increased rural investment where it makes sense," he replied, voice tightening. Jasmine didn't let up. "Interesting, because according to SB 483, a bill you co-sponsored, you approved cutting subsidies to counties with less than 20,000 residents unless they showed private sector participation. You know what that looks like in real life, Senator? It looks like kids doing homework in parked cars outside of fast food restaurants because there's no internet at home." The moderator blinked. Her cue card suddenly looked a lot less useful. "JD, lean forward, tone sharper now. You're trying to twist the record. Everyone knows these programs are bloated and inefficient. If a few tweaks to eligibility make them cleaner, that's a win." Jasmine gave the slightest tilt of her head. "A few tweaks? You mean eliminating entire grant blocks? You mean locking out towns like Mineral Wells or Levelland because they didn't have the right kind of investor interest?" She turned slightly in her chair, almost speaking to the camera now. "There are public school principals watching this right now who had to lay off staff because of those tweaks." JD sat back, clearly frustrated. He wasn't used to her style. No yelling, no long-winded lectures, just precision, measured control like someone cutting through glass with a steady hand. But Jasmine hadn't even opened the folder yet. Instead, she pivoted smooth and subtle. "Let's talk about transparency," she said, now pulling Gina back into the conversation. "Senator Vance often talks about being transparent with voters, about fighting for the truth. I think we can both agree transparency is critical." J'ai discussed. "Of course." Gina nodded. "That's fair. Voters are demanding more accountability on both sides." Jasmine gave a small nod. "Exactly. Which is why I was surprised, honestly, to learn about certain interactions between the senator's office and a group based out of Salt Lake City, a firm called Telluride Dynamics." That name changed the room. JD looked up. "Quick, too quick." Jasmine continued, still calm. "They're not a household name. Not yet. But they specialize in predictive surveillance software, facial recognition systems, geo-tracking. They recently signed a pilot contract with the Department of Corrections in Arizona." JD's jaw moved like he wanted to speak, but Jasmine went on. "What I found interesting," she said, opening the folder for the first time, "was the fact that this firm made a substantial donation to a PAC supporting the senator's re-election just 2 weeks after his office helped introduce language in a bill that expands government contracting for biometric surveillance platforms. The silence on set wasn't the kind that asked for drama. It was the kind that asked for clarification." JD forced a laugh. "This is ridiculous. That's a wild stretch." But Jasmine wasn't reaching. She slid a paper across the table. "This is the campaign finance disclosure, filed publicly. The firm is listed as the donor. The timing is all here. No speculation, just the facts." Gina glanced at the paper, but didn't say a word. She didn't have to. JD istonadined. This is exactly what people hate about politics. Conspiracy theories. Gotcha games. But now Jasmine leaned in. "There's no theory, Senator, just a pattern. And if we're going to talk about responsibility, maybe we should start there." JD's expression shifted, but it wasn't outrage. It was calculation. He was trying to decide whether to attack or ignore, but either way, the ground was starting to move beneath him, and Jasmine hadn't even hit the hardest part yet. JD. Vance was already uncomfortable, but he was still trying to play it off. Leaning back in his chair, jaw locked, foot tapping. He'd gone quiet. Too quiet for someone who loved the sound of his own voice. Jasmine didn't rush. She closed the folder gently, then looked straight at Gina. "May I ask something?" she said, calm as ever. Gina blinked. "Of course. If we're going to talk about influence," Jasmine said, "shouldn't we talk about the surveillance industry trying to make inroads into local law enforcement and schools under the banner of safety?" JD cut in. "That's fear-mongering. These technologies help prevent threats." Jasmine nodded. "Some do. Some are used responsibly. But Telluride Dynamics isn't just selling to prisons. They've pitched pilot programs to districts in Latch and Amarillo without consent from parents. Their platform tracks student movement using ID badges with facial recognition tech. Their own brochure calls it pre-incident behavioral mapping." Gina's eyes widened. "Wait, they're already in talks with schools." Jasmine slid another document across the table. This one's from an internal memo. Telluride reps met with a member of Senator Vance's staff last February, the day after language was added to SB 882, a bill to expand tech partnerships with state school systems. Nothing illegal, just quiet, just fast, just enough to avoid public hearings. JD shifted in his seat. "You don't know the full context. These meetings happen all the time." Jasmine turned to him, tone still low. "Then why didn't you disclose them? You've given 3 speeches about protecting students from overreach. Yet, your office was negotiating with a company that literally builds AI surveillance walls for maximum security prisons." Now, she looked at the camera. "Let me break it down for folks watching. A tech firm known for working with private prisons and military contractors gave money to a PAC aligned with Senator Vance. Days later, legislation moves forward that makes it easier for them to get into schools, without consent, without debate, and with full data access." She paused. "This is what influence looks like. Not a bag of money under a table. Just carefully timed decisions that no one notices until it's already policy." JD finally leaned in, tone sharp. "That's a smear. You're connecting dots that don't even belong on the same page." Jasmine didn't blink. "Then why did you try to bury the amendment behind a veterans' education bill? Why was that language only added in the 4th draft? Why did your own party's education chair say she hadn't seen it until the night before the vote?" He hesitated. It was quick, but it showed. "Political strategy," he said. "It's how the process works." "That's not a strategy," Jasmine said. "That's manipulation." The room was still. Gina didn't even try to pivot. The silence wasn't awkward. It was loud. It was the sound of someone watching a mask fall off. And Jasmine had more. She pulled out a 3rd sheet. "You want transparency? Here's an email thread from a FOIA request. Your legislative director speaking directly with Telluride's lobbyists. They reviewed the amendment before it was public. JD is fast. You want to talk about protecting people?" Jasmine said, her voice a notch firmer. "You let a company with 0 educational experience, just a record in incarceration and military hardware, shape legislation that affects children, all while pretending to be the voice of the heartland." He didn't speak. She leaned back. "I didn't bring this to embarrass you. I brought it because truth matters. People need to know who's writing their laws, and sometimes it's not the people they elected." For the first time that morning, Vance didn't have a response. Gina glanced at the cameras, then back at them. "We'll be taking a short break." The red light went off. A producer whispered something in her ear. JD stood slowly, didn't say a word. His face was flushed, hands tight at his sides. Jasmine remained seated, calm, ready. She opened her water bottle and took a slow sip. The break would only last 90 seconds, but that was more than enough time for the internet to catch fire. And this time, Vance wasn't trending because of a soundbite. He was trending because someone had finally done their homework. The cameras came back on, but something had shifted. Gone was the easy rhythm of banter. Gone was the pretense of friendly disagreement. Vance was no longer smiling. His arms were crossed, eyes slightly narrowed, like a man calculating his next move in a game. He thought he was winning until someone changed the rules. "So that's it," he said, just as Gina tried to reintroduce the segment. "You sit here with a folder full of cherry-picked paperwork, and now you're the truth teller of Washington." Jasmine didn't move. She just watched him. "You think you're some kind of whistleblower?" He continued, his tone rising. You're a freshman representative trying to score points off innuendo and leaks. She raised an eyebrow. You seem pretty defensive for someone who says there's nothing there. He ignored her. This is exactly the kind of performance people are tired of. Politicians acting like detectives, trying to turn every policy disagreement into a scandal. Now, he leaned forward, voice lower. You've been in Congress for what, 2 years? Maybe spend more time learning how it works before playing prosecutor. Gina stepped in, trying to cool it down. Let's keep this professional, please. Our viewers want substance, not. But Jasmine cut through cleanly. You want to talk about professionalism, Senator? Let's talk about that email you sent to the Telluride board member last March. The one thanking them for their collaborative input on school safety policies. JD's eyes flashed. That email wasn't classified, and you clearly don't understand context. Oh, I understand, she said, voice calm but clear. You thanked a private prison tech executive for influencing policy that affects public schools. That's the context. JD, turn to the camera. Now folks watching this, don't be fooled. She's playing a part, reading lines from a staff-prepared folder, hoping you will get emotional instead of asking real questions. Jasmine looked directly at him, then into the camera. You're right about one thing. I came prepared. I didn't walk in here to shout or grandstand. I brought facts. I brought your own words. And the only thing emotional here is the panic I see in your face. There was a pause. J'ai des sleep cold. You know what your problem is? But before he could finish, Jasmine spoke. You don't like being challenged by someone who didn't come up through your system. That's the real issue, isn't it? I don't play golf with your donors. I don't go to those retreats in Scottsdale. I don't talk like you, walk like you, or owe anyone a favor. He stared at her, silent. See, I don't have to raise my voice, she said, because when you're telling the truth, the room gets quiet all by itself. Behind the cameras, someone let out a soft breath, barely audible but real. Gina, sensing the shift, tried to move on. Let's return to policy. But J.D. was unraveling. This is character assassination. You don't understand how real governing works. You're out here grandstanding for retweets. Jasmine didn't flinch. No, I'm advocating for people who never get hurt in these rooms. While you're hosting closed-door fundraisers, I'm sitting at living room tables in Abilene, in Texarkana, in Laredo, hearing from parents who are terrified their kids are being watched and categorized by a system they didn't consent to. He scoffed. More drama. She looked at him once more. Say that to the mother whose child was flagged by Telluride software for suspicious movement just because he took too long to walk back from the restroom. JD went still. His name was Darnell, she added. 10 years old, put on a list. His school didn't even tell his parents until 6 weeks later. And that was it. That single sentence cut through the noise, through J.D.'s deflection, through the studio polish. You could hear in the silence after, real silence, the kind that makes people uncomfortable because it exposes something they didn't want to see. J.D. knew he couldn't claw his way back. Not with sound bites, not with sarcasm. He had picked the wrong person to underestimate, and now the country was watching him squirm. The panel wrapped 20 minutes later, but the real show had already started. Clips of Jasmine's takedown hit social media before the segment even ended. Someone in the control room leaked a behind-the-scenes camera angle, the one that caught J.D.'s face the moment she mentioned Telluride. The internet ate it up. By noon, her name was trending in Austin, Los Angeles, and Cincinnati. Headlines spun out faster than staffers could respond. Crockett exposes Vance in live showdown. Texas rep links surveillance firm to Senate bill. J.D. Vance caught flat-footed on national TV. It wasn't just progressive outlets. Even neutral platforms like Stateline Now and Capitol Report were running the footage on repeat. But the real momentum came from regular people. A high school teacher in El Paso reposted the clip with the caption, "Finally, someone talking about this garbage. We've had cameras in the halls for years, but now they're tracking student behavior." Thank you, Jasmine Crockett. A grandmother in Tulsa shared a screenshot of the PAC filing with the words, "This is what selling out looks like." And the comments kept pouring in. She stayed calm the whole time. That's how you lead. J.D. Vance just got exposed with receipts. This wasn't a soundbite. It was a clinic. Even people who hadn't paid much attention to her before were asking, who is Jasmine Crockett and how do we miss her rise? In Ohio, things got quiet, too quiet. Vance's team didn't issue a statement until later that night. And even then, it was vague. Senator Vance remains committed to safeguarding both civil liberties and national security, the kind of copy-paste PR that screams, we have no idea how to spin this yet. Meanwhile, Jasmine's inbox was overflowing. Elected officials from California to Michigan were asking for her source documents. Civil liberties groups offered to partner with her. Even a few old-school journalists admitted off-record that she'd just set a new bar for public accountability. Her staff, they were speechless. Not because they didn't believe in her. They did, but they hadn't expected that moment, that level of clarity under pressure. I've never seen anything like it, her chief of staff said, pacing the hallway in the Dallas studio. She didn't just bring evidence, she brought it to life. Back home in Texas, her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. People from small towns she'd visited months ago were reaching out. Miss Crockett, I saw the show. We're proud of you. You said what we've been thinking, but couldn't prove. My daughter goes to one of those schools. Thank you. And then came the personal message, anonymous, sent through a secure tip line her office maintained. Telluride came to our campus in January. We were told not to speak to parents about the pilot program. They paid for a wing remodel. We didn't even get a vote. She stared at it for a moment, forwarded it to legal, then shut her phone and sat in silence for a while. Because this wasn't just a panel gone viral. This was the start of something bigger. Gina Breener, the host of the panel, posted something rare for a journalist that afternoon. In 20 years of moderating live debate, I've never seen someone so calm, so prepared, and so quietly devastating. Crockett didn't throw punches. She dismantled her opponent with facts. We saw something important today, and people believed her, not just because she was credible, but because it felt real. No theatrics, no catchphrases, just one woman armed with the truth and unwilling to back down. But Jasmine knew this wave of attention wouldn't last forever. The question now wasn't whether people were listening. It was what they'd do with what they just heard. By the next morning, the headlines had evolved. This wasn't just about a viral moment anymore. Journalists were digging. Investigative threads on X, formerly Twitter, had sprouted overnight, connecting Telluride dynamics to quietly approved contracts in 5 states: Texas, Arizona, Utah, Nevada, Indiana. Local school boards were now getting calls from angry parents. Why haven't we heard about this? Did we approve the surveillance software? Who's behind it? Jasmine Crockett had done more than call out a senator. She'd torn a curtain wide open. And yet, she didn't change her schedule. No media blitz, no cable tours. That Monday, she was back at her district office in Lancaster, Texas, meeting with constituents, taking phone calls, reviewing legislation. Same beat, different echo. Her staff begged her to capitalize on the moment. Jazz, CNN's requesting a segment. MSNBC too. NPR wants a sit-down. She just raised her hand slightly. We do the work first. Let the noise do what it does. Across the country, JD, Vance had gone silent. No tweets, no interviews, just a single statement from his office claiming the allegations lacked context and misrepresented the senator's record. But people weren't buying it. He'd been too quiet during the show, too reactive, too off balance. And silence in politics is its own kind of admission. Within 48 hours, a Senate aide from another office confirmed anonymously to the Columbus Dispatch that yes, there had been private discussions with Telluride, that the school safety amendment came from external parties, that Vance's team had fast-tracked it through back channels. Public trust started to fray. Town halls turned tense. Protesters showed up in Toledo. A local NPR affiliate in Dayton aired a special on student privacy. One teacher teared up on air, saying, "We weren't told about the software tracking kids' behavior patterns. We didn't even know there was a contract." The story had grown beyond politics. It had become about power, consent, and the quiet ways people are watched without realizing it. But Jasmine, she didn't gloat. Instead, she held a press conference 3 days later, not in D.C., but outside a middle school in Texarkana. She stood next to parents, teachers, and a seventh grader named Simone, who said she'd been called in for behavior review because an algorithm flagged her for wandering too frequently. The crowd was silent as Jasmine stepped up to the podium. "This isn't about one senator," she said. "This is about a system that lets private companies write the rules. This is about students being turned into data points. And this is about reminding the people in power that they answer to the public, not donors, not lobbyists, not hidden agendas." She didn't yell. She didn't need to. After the event, someone from Simone's family approached her. "Thank you," the girl's mother whispered. "You're the first person who made us feel like we weren't imagining it." That stayed with her. Later that night, back in her apartment, Jasmine finally let herself exhale. No cameras, no crowd, just her and the silence of someone who knows they've done the right thing, even if it cost them comfort. She didn't need to win headlines. She needed the truth to stand on its own. And it had, because the real win wasn't the takedown. It was giving people the words they needed to ask the questions no one wanted them to ask. And once those questions start, they don't stop. 2 weeks later, Jasmine Crockett was sitting in a radio studio in Tulsa. The show was live but quiet, intimate. No cameras, just her and the host, Robert Evers, a calm voice with a loyal audience. He leaned toward the mic. "Congresswoman Crockett, I've had a dozen guests in this seat talk about transparency, accountability, big words. But I've got to ask you straight, what made you go through with it? You had to know the risks." She didn't hesitate. "I didn't run for office to keep things smooth," she said. "I ran because I was tired of people being locked out of conversations that decide everything for them. Sometimes the hardest thing is sitting at a table and saying the thing no one else wants to hear." Robert nodded. "And how did you keep your cool? I mean, J.D. Vance, he came at you hard." She allowed a small breath. "That's the trick. I wasn't performing for him. I was thinking about the people I met on the road. About the girl who said her school started locking bathroom doors after the first bell. About a mom who couldn't get answers about why her kid was suddenly pulled into a counselor's office for monitoring. That's who I was speaking to, not him." Robert leaned back. "There's a difference between fighting and leading." "Huh?" "Exactly," she said. "He wanted to fight. I came to serve. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't a zinger for headlines, but it landed. Because people listening weren't looking for perfection. They were looking for someone who remembered who they worked for. And while political news cycles kept spinning, something deeper was starting to shift. A week after the broadcast, 3 school districts announced they were reviewing contracts with tech surveillance vendors. One even paused implementation altogether, pending a full audit. Parents were showing up at school board meetings with printed pages of tell rights proposals. Teachers were asking for consent forms before any new monitoring tech rolled out. Jasmine didn't take credit. She didn't need to. She was already working on new legislation, a simple bill, just 6 pages. It would require full public disclosure of any contracts between educational institutions and biometric tech companies. It would ban any use of predictive behavior scoring without parental consent. It wouldn't solve everything, but it was a start because change didn't always come with applause. Sometimes it came with paperwork, with late nights, with people pushing quietly behind the scenes until the machine had to slow down and look at itself. Weeks later, back in Dallas, a woman approached Jasmine in a grocery store. She was older, maybe late 60s, with tired eyes, but a strong posture. "I saw what you did," she said. "I don't watch much news anymore. Too loud, too angry. But you made me listen again." Jasmine smiled. "That means a lot." The woman nodded. "Don't stop. They're counting on you to get tired. Don't let them be right." That night, Jasmine sat at her desk reviewing notes, headlines, and the beginnings of a new initiative on public tech oversight. She wasn't thinking about the moment J.D. Vance stammered on live TV. That didn't matter now. What mattered was that people had started paying attention. And once people wake up, they don't just go back to sleep. They ask harder questions. They expect better answers. They remember who told them the truth when it wasn't easy. Because moments fade, but truth lingers. This story, therefore, teaches us several invaluable lessons about integrity and advocacy in public life. First and foremost, the power of truth, when fortified by robust evidence, can dismantle even the most carefully constructed deceptions and empty rhetoric. It's about letting facts speak for themselves, rather than relying on emotional appeals or grandstanding. Furthermore, maintaining composure in the face of adversity proves to be an undeniable strength. Jasmine's calm demeanor under pressure not only reinforced her arguments, but also exposed her opponent's fluster, revealing his vulnerabilities. Beyond that, true leadership is about serving others, not merely achieving personal victories. Jasmine's dedication stemmed from her commitment to the people she represented, prioritizing their well-being over scoring political points, and this genuine motivation empowered her with unwavering conviction. Consequently, inciting change often begins with the courage to ask difficult questions. By challenging the status quo and uncovering hidden agendas, Jasmine sparked a public awakening, prompting people to question their surroundings and demand transparency. Finally, the narrative underscores the profound importance of persistence and accountability. Real change isn't a fleeting moment of viral fame. It's a sustained effort, demanding ongoing commitment and a willingness to consistently uphold one's responsibilities. If you're looking for inspiration to make a difference, remember that sometimes all it takes is one person brave enough to speak the truth when everyone else is still pretending not to see.